The King's Avatar, Chapter 1692. A Gun Can Miss. Audio source, wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1692. A Gun Can Miss. Translator, Noam Yummy. Editor, Noam Yummy. Fang Minghua sensed Happy's intentions, and he knew that the situation was not looking good. He was very clear about the mobility of Samsara's characters. Normally speaking, assassins, battle mages, and sharpshooters were relatively mobile. His laughing song and Zhang Boteo's empty waves were only slightly worse. However, right now, Laughing Song didn't need to move on his own. Yishu's Lord Grim and Tangru's Soft Mist were helping him move using blow-away and knockback skills. Laughing Song's current movement speed was even faster than his sprinting. Sima Zheng helped block the pursuers and would even coordinate with Yishu and Tangru from time to time. Together, the three of them formed a beautiful combo. Battle Mage and Launcher, Yishu and Sima Zheng, best partners. All of these were a part of this well-coordinated play. On Samsara's side, even with swift movements activated, Wu Qi's cruel silence could only keep up with them. Sun Zhang's One Autumn Leaf had no neutral chasers to buff him, and clearly lagged behind. Zhang Boteo's empty waves didn't even need to be said. He had been left in the dust. His situation looked rather embarrassing. How bold! The pro players discussed spiritedly. Happy was clearly doing something beyond their expectations. In the finals, especially the deciding match, everyone would always be particularly careful. That was where the saying, "anticipated match, boring game," came from. But the play that Happy was making, this was an extremely risky play. While attacking Laughing Song, they had to carry him along faster than Samsara could, and Samsara wasn't slow at all. The coordination need was extraordinarily difficult. There were too many factors need to be taken into consideration. Even the slightest slip-up would end in failure. Happy's healer, Little Cold Hands, was being blown up by Josekai's Cloud Piercer, and Happy wasn't giving their healer even the slightest bit of help. If they made a mistake and Samsara caught up, it would be impossible for them to save Little Cold Hands. Little Cold Hands had lost half his health already. If Samsara was willing to focus him without regard for anything else, they could finish off Little Cold Hands in the blink of an eye. Failure meant death. Happy was determined to carry out this healer trade. They were walking on a tightrope, not leaving themselves any path of retreat. A single misstep, and they would fall into a bottomless abyss. Compared to their brilliant teamwork, the pro players admired Happy's bravery more. The other problem was that a majority of their efforts need to be put into moving Laughing Song, so even though Yishu and Tangru were both dealing damage, their DPS was mediocre. They couldn't compare to Josekai's explosive DPS towards Little Cold Hands. Josekai felt a bit more at ease because of this, but he didn't stop paying attention to that side. Seeing that the other three on Samsara weren't able to catch up to Happy's side, Josekai had decided to give them a helping hand. He could see how difficult it was for Happy to execute this play. The slightest interference might be able to break it apart. His Cloud Piercer wasn't faster than Cruel Silence or One Autumn Leaf, but he was a long-ranged attacker. He could attack Yishu and Tangru from his current position. He made his decision. Cloud Piercer suddenly stepped back and moved to the side. Then, he lifted his guns. Bang! Gunshot, a figure, blood. Little Cold Hands suddenly moved to the side too, positioning himself in front of the guns. Knee strike. Cloud Piercer lifted his knee. He wasn't in a hurry to keep Little Cold Hands under control. Even a single bullet might be enough to break open the situation on that side. He only needed a tiny opening, and during this tiny opening, what could a cleric do to him? And when he obviously couldn't do anything to him, he only had one thought on his mind: I have to stop Josekai from providing support no matter what. His Little Cold Hands had no combat ability. His little tricks might work against Samsara's healer, but it was nothing in front of Josekai. The only thing he could use was Little Cold Hand's body. He could use his life to block Cloudpiercer's bullets. And Wen Yi was certain that he had never been this focused in his entire life. His little cold hands had been taking a beating the entire time, but as soon as Josei's Cloudpiercer moved aside to shoot towards that side, he immediately did all he could to stop him. Sometimes he could do it. Sometimes he couldn't. But he knew how crucial this moment was. He couldn't fail this time. Little Cold Hands threw himself towards Cloudpiercer's guns. But what followed soon after was a knee strike. And Wen Yi saw it very clearly. Little Cold Hands jumped back. The knee strike missed. But with this dodge, a small opening was left behind. Cloudpiercer raised his guns and fired twice. Little Cold Hands jumped up. And Wen Yi had Little Cold Hands jump towards Cloudpiercer's head to block his vision. The only thing that Josei could see was a blood-soaked cleric's robe. Blind firing? Josei had the ability to do so, but the problem was that he needed to aim at a very fast-moving target. Even if he had a clear view of his target, he would need to predict where the target would move ahead of time. It wouldn't have been easy. But now that he was blinded, it was too difficult even for Josei. WuxiaWorldAudio.com. Even so, he still fired his guns. The bullets loaded and fired. He had to at least try. The gunshot startled Wen Yi, but he didn't dare look back. What if it missed? He had to keep going. But at this moment, Cloudpiercer jumped up, and his Little Cold Hands was currently falling. There was a difference in timing, and this time, let alone Josei's line of sight, even Cloudpiercer's two guns were above him. There's nothing I can do. And Wen Yi could only watch. He had no way to stop Cloudpiercer from attacking. Damn it. And Wen Yi hated himself for being so useless. Gunshot. The airborne Cloudpiercer fired 2 shots in quick succession. But then, and when you saw Yishu type in chat, "Keep it up." This time, and when you couldn't help but look back. Yishu's Lord Grim was using charge to move AEAD. His umbrella was in its shield form, a priest weapon, so it didn't affect his usage of charge. As a result, he saw Lord Grim's umbrella facing the side, blocking Cloudpiercer's shots. Don't get careless. Just because he's fired his gun doesn't mean that we'll definitely be hit. Yishu continued. Also, Little Joe, wasn't your attack a bit too careless? As he said this, the canopy of the Myriad Manifestations umbrella folded. The umbrella ribs retracted, exposing the muzzle of a gun. Gunshot. Yishu had fired back at Josei's Cloudpiercer, and Chapter The King's Avatar, Chapter 1693 Dual Guns Erupt. Audio source, WuxiaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1693 Dual Guns Erupt. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Block, counterattack, and taunt in the chat. Yishu's response seemed so casual. And Wen Yi was so moved he almost cried. This was his teammate, a teammate that couldn't be more reliable. He might not have been able to stop Josei from attacking, but his teammates weren't going to be done in so easily. His teammates were all far stronger than him. It was precisely because he had such amazing teammates that his reckless interference was especially meaningful. I have to keep going. And Wen Yi grit his teeth. But at this moment, a bullet flew over. Finally, it wasn't Josei's Cloudpiercer harassing others, but someone harassing him. The speed of the bullet wasn't fast, which let Josei know that this was a stun bullet. It moved slowly and had low damage, but its secondary effect was frightening. The attack had to be avoided. However, Cloudpiercer was currently airborne, making it much more difficult for him to dodge. Josei looked at the direction of the bullet. Then, Cloudpiercer fired rapidly towards the ground, using aerial gun to force Cloudpiercer to the side. The stun bullet brushed past him just like that. But, pooh, the sound of a bullet hitting flesh could be heard clearly. How?
Zhou Zekai was startled. He saw it clearly. Cloudpiercer should have been outside of the bullet's trajectory. But what hit Cloudpiercer was unmistakably a stun bullet. Behind, Zhou Zekai realized what had happened. But Cloudpiercer was stunned now. There was nothing he could do as he fell from the skies. Dancing rain. Countless people only realized it after the replay. When Yi Xiu counterattacked, Suma Chun coordinated with him, and fired a stun bullet from behind Cloudpiercer. The two of them timed it perfectly. The stun bullets were fired at the exact same time. Even a godly sharpshooter like Zhou Zekai hadn't noticed that two bullets had been fired at that moment. As for the others on Samsara, they had been waiting for Zhou Zekai to create an opportunity for them to rescue Laughing Song. How could they have known Yi Xiu and Suma Chung would work together to attack Zhou Zekai? Even now, they were still lamenting that the attempt to block Yi Xiu had failed. They were still hoping for Zhou Zekai to try again, and hadn't noticed that a stun bullet had hit Cloudpiercer. And Wen Yi didn't know either. All he saw was Cloudpiercer dodging Lord Grimm's stun bullet. I can't only rely on my teammates. I have to work even harder. And Wen Yi strengthened his resolve, but immediately afterwards, he noticed that Cloudpiercer was stunned. And Wen Yi's mind worked quickly. He didn't understand how, but Cloudpiercer was stunned. The stun bullet hit. And Wen Yi was puzzled. He had clearly seen a bullet miss. How did he get hit? Yi Xiu. How did he pull that off? And Wen Yi was thinking too much, but he knew that he had to seize this opening. He had been working as a meat shield the entire time, but now, there was an opportunity for him to attack back. Little Cold Hands was covered in blood, yet the light of her holy cross shone as pure and bright as ever. Hypnosis. And Wen Yi wanted to use this skill the most. However, although hypnosis had a powerful CC effect, it had a long cast time. The stun duration wasn't enough for Little Cold Hands to complete hypnosis. The next best thing was Sacred Fire. 5 seconds of reduced damage, and 3 seconds of silence. Sharpshooters utilized their normal attacks far more than other classes, so being silenced wasn't as terrifying for them. However, it would still greatly reduce his combat strength. More importantly, clerics didn't have any better CC skills available. No matter how great Zhou Zekai was, he couldn't cleanse the stun. He could only watch as Little Cold Hand summoned a Sacred Fire. The spell was cast, and Holy Fire engulfed Cloudpiercer. It wasn't until these flames blazed that the others on Samsara realized that something had happened to Zhou Zekai. Everyone turned to look, and saw Little Cold Hands lighting Cloudpiercer on fire. At that distance, a cleric without any protection was actually able to land Sacred Fire on Zhou Zekai's Cloudpiercer. Stunned, frozen, hypnotized, dizzy. In any case, the others on Samsara could ascertain that Cloudpiercer had definitely suffered some immobilizing effect. Help him. The thought popped into everyone's minds, but it was quickly thrown aside. No matter what status he was affected by, it wouldn't last long. Zhou Zekai was only facing a cleric, who posed no threat to him. Cloudpiercer was also a long-ranged attacker. Even if and when Yi's Little Cold Hands ran away during this time, he wouldn't be able to escape from Cloudpiercer's attack range. There's no need to help him. Everyone came to the same conclusion. However, they had to face the effects of Zhou Zekai temporarily gone. And when Yi's Little Cold Hands didn't run away because he knew that he couldn't. The key was Qiao Yifan's 1-inch ash. He had been pinned down by Zhou Zekai the entire time. The heroic leap from Wen Yi's Little Cold Hands had helped him win a small opening, but that had only happened once. Afterwards, as Joseki Cloudpiercer attacked Little Cold Hands, he also took care of Qiao Yifan's 1-inch ash, preventing him from setting up any ghost boundaries. And Wen Yi obviously wanted to protect him, but close combat was never a cleric's specialty in the first place. When Joseki truly focused on him, there was only so much he could do. When he blocked the bullet for Yishu and Tang Rou, he had gotten lucky. 1-inch ash. Samsara's players shifted their attention to 1-inch ash. Wuxia But soon afterwards, they discovered that 1-inch ash had disappeared. To the side of the lofty pyramid were the remains of an ancient city. Destroyed walls and pillars were scattered throughout the ruins. When Cloudpiercer had been hit by the stun bullet, Qiao Yifan's 1-inch ash had taken the opportunity to hide who knew where. Joseki hadn't noticed. No one on Samsara had noticed. Even An Wen Yi hadn't noticed. Many of the spectators hadn't noticed Sima Cheng's stun bullet until the replay, but Qiao Yifan had noticed it. Because he was always paying attention to the entire battlefield. He was always observing each and every teammate and opponent. The simultaneous stun bullets from Lord Grim and Dancing Rain. Apart from Yishu and Sima Cheng themselves, he was the only player on the battlefield to have noticed their teamwork. It'll hit. Qiao Yifan determined at that moment. Should he place down a ghost boundary to further suppress Cloudpiercer? He quickly dispelled the thought. Because Qiao Yifan didn't have any ghost boundaries available that would suppress Cloudpiercer effectively. Darkness Boundary and Ice Boundary were on cooldown. Ash Boundary, Silence Boundary wouldn't be effective on Cloudpiercer. It would be somewhat of a waste of an opportunity. As for Flame Boundary, which dealt damage, and Plague Boundary, which changed the opponent's stats, those were even more meaningless. In the end, Qiao Yifan chose to move away. Using this opportunity, 1-inch ash escaped from Cloudpiercer's firing range. Little Cold Hands and Cloudpiercer were too close, so the stun duration wasn't long enough for Little Cold Hands to run away. However, Qiao Yifan had been trying to run away from Joseki for a long time and was farther away from him. Now that such a huge opening had appeared, escaping would be easy. Cloudpiercer's bullet didn't chase after him. In fact, none of the other Samsara players had looked towards 1-inch ash. Qiao Yifan's heart was beating like crazy. He knew that he had to take advantage of this opportunity no matter what. He contacted Yishu in the chat, and the two had a brief conversation. 1-inch ash carefully hid himself behind a crumbling wall. His silver weapon, Snow Stripe, started to glow. End chapter. The King's Avatar, Chapter 1694 Phantom Demons Obstruction, audio source, WuxiaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1694, Phantom Demons Obstruction. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Boom boom boom. Lord Grim and Sophmis sent Laughing Song hurtling away. As they pushed him along, they attacked Laughing Song whenever they could. The skillful coordination between the two of them made even their teammate, Qiao Yifan, sigh in admiration. At the same time, he also noticed that Lord Grim had set it up so that Laughing Song wouldn't be able to see 1-inch ash. Is that also considered Vanishing Step? Qiao Yifan thought to himself. He didn't forget to be diligent with his observations. Whether it was an ally or an enemy, he would do his best to find things that he could improve upon from them. From Lord Grim's attacks towards Laughing Song, Qiao Yifan could see hints of Vanishing Step. Usually, Vanishing Step was performed by moving into their dead angles. In this case, Yishu was using Lord Grim's attacks to adjust Laughing Song's positioning, placing 1-inch ash inside Laughing Song's dead angles. The principle's the same, but it looks even harder than Vanishing Step, Qiao Yivan believed. Using attacks to control someone else's character was definitely much more difficult than controlling your own character. Now, it's my turn. Qiao Yivan wouldn't forget to keep learning even inside a match, but he wouldn't forget about his mission either. Seeing Lord Grim and Soft Mist moving Laughing Song along, his 1-inch ash immediately began casting as if he had received an order. The ghostly power flowed along his blade like water. Suddenly, it dripped down, and sunk into the ground, spreading outwards. Outside of the ruins, Wu Qi's cruel silence was still the fastest among Samsara. Even though Samsara had noticed that Qiao Yifan's 1-inch ash had suddenly vanished, rescuing Laughing Song was necessary. For now, they could only stay in pursuit, while being wary of their surroundings. 19 steps away, Wu Qi was keeping track of the distance. The distance between Cruel Silence and Laughing Song wasn't steady. Sometimes, the distance would widen. Sometimes, the distance would shrink. After all, the two sides weren't simply running. Yishu and Tangro had to coordinate together, and Wu Qi need to avoid Sima Cheng's interference. Sure enough, not marking Sima Cheng had a huge impact. Samsara could feel it deeply. If not for Dancing Rain's interference, they might have been able to catch up to Lord Grim and Soft Mist by now. However, the situation couldn't be considered too terrible. Wu Qi was confident. With him in close pursuit, Lord Grim and Soft Mist could only attack on occasion. Laughing Song would still be able to survive for a long time. During this time, would the two unhappy be able to keep this up without making a single mistake? Zhou Zekai's previous long-ranged assistance had failed, but that didn't mean it would stop there. Suppose the worst case, and Wen Yi's little cold hands was able to prevent him from providing support every single time. In that case, Zhou Zekai could simply focus on killing little cold hands, and then help them. There was more than enough time. There was also Sima Cheng's interference. Samsara was preparing to restrict her. Jiang Botao's empty waves was slower than the others. He was being left farther and farther behind, so it was pointless for him to continue chasing. He might as well turn around and go for Sima Cheng's Dancing Rain. The others hadn't noticed the stun bullet from Sima Cheng onto Cloud Piercer, but Zhou Zekai had. He told his team, and the team felt like a box one on Sima Cheng was necessary. They shouldn't be giving her free rein. However, Samsara hadn't expected Happy to make such a bold play. Moreover, Yishu's methods were rather risky, which was why they all charged over there. If they had known this would end up being a competition in speed and that Happy had specifically practiced for this, they would have split up the work long ago. For example, Jiang Botao's Empty Waves was a spellblade, who wasn't suited for a race. They had promptly made the necessary adjustments. It couldn't be said that their reaction was slow, so they weren't feeling too frantic at the moment. The only problem was Qiao Yifan's 1-inch ash. That guy had suddenly disappeared. For Samsara, he was a huge worry. Phantom demons had immense crowd control. If they were suddenly caught in one of his ghost boundaries, it would be devastating. Even though they were worried, Samsara didn't slow down. The only thing that they could do was give chase. Since they weren't clear about 1-inch Ash's situation, worrying about him too much would only distract them. Samsara was quite resolved about this point. Wu Qi's cruel silence carried on the glorious speed of an assassin, moving swiftly like an arrow. With a flicker, he appeared into Qiao Yifan's line of sight. Suddenly, he slowed down. What's going on? Wu Qi was startled for a moment, but he quickly realized what had happened. The earth beneath Cruel Silence's feet looked as if it had been dyed with black ink. His every moment suddenly seemed heavy. Ash Boundary increased the weight of the affected characters, reducing their movement speed. The effects had spread onto Cruel Silence. The distance between Cruel Silence and Laughing Song suddenly widened. Cruel Silence could only trudge his way through slowly. He turned his head, and saw 1-inch Ash hiding behind the wall. Wu Chi sent a message, telling his team of 1-inch Ash's position. However, it would take him some time before he walked out of the Ash Boundary. Jiang Botao's Empty Waves was charging towards Dancing Rain. Zhou Zekai's Cloud Piercer was no longer stunned, but he couldn't see 1-inch Ash from his position. It would be hard for him to cover him. There was only Sun Xiang's one Autumn Leaf left. One Autumn Leaf had also been caught by the Ash Boundary. However, he had been slightly behind Cruel Silence, who was at the very center of it. That meant that he would be able to exit the Ash Boundary much sooner. Right now, they need to keep close to Lord Grim and Soft Mist, which meant that they had to keep pushing forward. However, if he wanted to leave this Ash Boundary, he would need to fall back. One Autumn Leaf moved back. He had no other choice. Cruel Silence slowly moved forward as he waited for a skill to come off cooldown. Xing Cut. With this movement skill, Cruel Silence would be able to quickly get out of the Ash Boundary. But then, he saw the Ghost God's power gathering around 1-inch Ash's touchy, Snow Stripe. A deathly silence descended. The Xing Cut that had just gone off cooldown was suddenly sealed. Silence Boundary. All skills were silenced while inside of it. Weighed down by Ash Boundary and silenced by Silence Boundary, Cruel Silence could only slowly walk forward. Even though one Autumn Leaf had escaped, if he wanted to push forward, he would need to go around the Ghost Boundary. Lord Grim and Soft Mist were getting farther and farther away, but he would need to go around the Ghost Boundary while also being careful of 1-inch Ash. Sun Xiang was feeling particularly annoyed. But right now, he was facing an even more difficult choice. Should he continue chasing after Lord Grim and Soft Mist, or should he go after 1-inch Ash? He wasn't the only one thinking this question. Outside of the match, the pro players were also in a fervent discussion. One Autumn Leaf was very far from Lord Grim and Soft Mist. If he continued to give chase, would he be able to catch up? Lord Grim and Soft Mist had no way escaped outside of Cloud Pierce's attack range. If Zhou Zekai wanted to provide support to his side, he would need to give up on Little Cold Hands. However, giving up on Little Cold Hands was risky. Little Cold Hands didn't have much health left. If he gave up on him, and Laughing Song wasn't rescued in the end, it would be like losing an army after having given away the bride. It looked like Zhou Zekai was clearly prioritizing killing Little Cold Hands. Without his support and at this distance, would giving chase do anything? But if he didn't give chase, WuxaWorldAudio.com. The other side would be completely free. They could stop and focus on attacking. It would be a 2v1, and it wouldn't be long before Laughing Song was killed. A healer-for-healer trade would be Samsara's loss. That was certain. Both options were unfavorable for Samsara. But what if he could kill 1-inch Ash here? Someone suddenly said. Both sides would kill the other side's healer, but Samsara would also take down 1-inch Ash. That would be a 1v2 trade, and that was undoubtedly a trade that Samsara would take. But that would be quite difficult. No. Li Xuan said. He had the right of speech on anything related to Qiao Yifan's 1-inch Ash. As the #1 Phantom Demon, he knew what Qiao Yifan should do next. I know it. Seeing Qiao Yifan's response, Li Xuan nodded his head. 1-inch Ash walked out. His position was already exposed. There was no point in hiding behind the wall anymore, so he walked out from behind the wall. Not just Wu Qi, but Sun Xiang also knew exactly where he was. However, 1-inch Ash was standing inside his ghost boundary. Ghost boundaries weren't just to control and restrict the enemy. Ghost boundaries such as sword boundary could also buff the strength and intelligence of allies. At the same time, the ghost boundaries that debuff the enemy could also be considered a form of protection for allies as well. Countless players, especially the close-ranged ones, loathed ghost boundaries. The more extreme ones even considered ghost boundaries as a bug. Because if the Ghost Blade stepped into his own ghost boundary, how were the close-ranged classes supposed to fight him? How? Fight the Ghost Blade while being unable to see inside a darkness boundary? Or while slowed in an Ash boundary? Or while unable to use skills in a silence boundary? It was impossible. That was why Sun Xiang could only look at him hatefully. It wasn't that close-ranged classes had no methods to deal with ghost boundary. However, these methods were slow and required time. But what Samsara lacked the most was time. While he slowly contended with Qiao Yivan, Yi Shu and Tang Rou would kill off Laughing Song in the blink of an eye and then come back to help Qiao Yivan. If Jiang Botao was still there, Wang Jiexi said. Jiang Botao's empty waves was a spellblade. Spellblade attacks weren't long-ranged but mid-ranged. But since he didn't need to get close, he didn't need to slowly contend with the Ghost Blade. Moreover, with another player's fighting strength, Samsara would be able to kill 1-inch Ash much faster if they focused him. They could decisively give up on Laughing Song, and go for a 2-for-1 trade. But unfortunately, Jiang Botao wasn't there. End chapter.